So a little while back, a video from TikTok user Pop Music Mark appeared in my feed, and it has had me in a vice grip ever since. Because in it, he posits that there was a hyper-specific era of pop music in 2006, consisting only of Fergie's The Dutchess, Nelly Furtado's Loose, and Gwen Stefani's The Sweet Escape, and that these records were necessary for the dance pop to come. Now I don't quite agree with this theory in full, because I think that there were other forces that were at play that had a much bigger influence on the rise of dance pop at the start of the 2010s and the sort of rise that we've had since, in particular the emergence of modern EDM towards the end of the 2000s. But I do agree with him on how significant not only those three records were, but so much of the pop music from 2006 was on the music that would come after it. 2006 was a pivotal year in modern pop music history. The golden era of R&B was coming to an end, and a new generation of pop R&B was beginning to emerge. Britney didn't release anything this year as she was focusing on her family, which made room for other pop girlies to come through and take her spot. A number of artists who would go on to become some of the defining performers of our times were on the rise as well. And perhaps most significantly of all, 2006 was the year that poptimism began to become the force that it is today. All of this helped to produce a year of pop music that really does stand out within the annals of music history. There was a real definable style that linked so much of this music together, and a lot of it happens to be some of my favourite material that the 2000s ever produced. I want to explore and celebrate that, and so in this video we're going to take a look at some of the biggest pop albums that the year produced, as well as some of the biggest pop singles from that year as well. We're going to delve into exactly what the sound of 2006 pop music was, and see just how far Pop Music Mark's theory can be taken. But before we get into that, hi guys.
Guess who's back?
It's been a minute, hasn't it? It's been a big year for me. I've had a lot of stuff going on. I've moved house, as you might be able to tell. We are still working on the new setup. Need to sort of put my clothes away a bit more. And then I've also spent most of this summer inebriated in various fields across the British countryside. So, you know, I've basically not had as much inspiration for making videos as I used to have, and other stuff in life has kind of taken over that anyway, but I'm really keen to get back into it, and I've got some really exciting stuff that I want to share with you guys. If I ever do go AWOL again, or if you want to kind of just keep up to date with me and what else I'm doing, check out my blog. It's where I post loads of music reviews, live stuff, all that kind of bits and bobs, and it's, you know, a different format, a different way of receiving me. You can read me on the train rather than having to watch me wear stupid shirts on, you know, with a picture of fucking Natalie Dormer behind there. Anyway, let's get back to the video. Let's start by grounding ourselves in the year of our Lord, 2006. This was the year that Google bought YouTube for $1.65 billion US. Nintendo released the Wii and the DS Lite this year, whilst The Elder Scrolls Oblivion and Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess are the year's critically acclaimed games. The Winter Olympics are hosted in Turin, and Germany hosts the World Cup. In cinemas, Dead Man's Chest becomes the fastest film to gross $1 billion US in history, setting the record at 63 days. A record that has been broken several times over for better and for worse in the years since. Meanwhile, my favourite James Bond film of all time, Casino Royale, arrived in the autumn. The first ever High School Musical film was released, whilst on telly this was the year that Hannah Montana started airing. We also got the first series of H2O, Just Add Water. Music-wise, Taylor Swift made her debut this year, Take That reformed, and we will not be looking at anything they did in this video. MCR released The Black Parade, the Arctic Monkeys released Whatever People Say, a twerpy Pokemon-obsessed Munra gets an album called Sam's Town by The Killers and is obsessed, Nas tells everyone hip-hop is dead, Pink says that she's not, and the coolest band of all time in the history of all conceivable music ever released their last, truly great album. Now for popular music specifically, not just out-and-out pop music, this was a real era of change. The golden era of R&B that had dominated the late 90s and first half of the 2000s was coming to an end. Its biggest artists were moving on, and its sound was evolving into a new era of contemporary R&B with a thoroughly popular twist. If you want to illustrate that in your head, Do It To It by Cherish is a perfect example. Hints of the acts that came before them galore, but with a thoroughly popular and blingier feel. This shift shift really set up the modern pop R&B foundation that so many artists would use for years to come. That is, R&B beats and production being used for chart music, as well as venturing into more conventional pop as well. And while this transition was occurring, 2006 saw a lot of music that had a real world sound feel to it. Some tracks took direct influences from other non-Western genres, such as Arabic music and Latin music, but more generally, it kind of just feels to me like a lot of the songs that were released in 2006 were kind of set in a faraway place, often in a more sort of tropical setting. We'll delve into this when we get into the music in a little more depth. Now, I mentioned earlier about the definable style of 2006 pop music, and what I mean by that is that there were a broad number of characteristics that were very similar across much of the pop music that was released this year. It often had quite a quirky, adventurous feel to it, with hooks sounding playful and even whimsical on occasion. Songs really achieved their catchiness by being a little bit weird. I mean, just think about the woohoo yeehoo hook on The Sweet Escape by Gwen Stefani as an example. Production-wise, songs had to be a real collage of varied textures. Smoothness was uncommon to find. There was also a particular focus on making tracks club ready. Songs need to have danceable hooks, danceable beats, and need to carry the weight and intensity that would allow them to succeed in a club room. Key to this were two people in particular, Timberlake and Pharrell Williams. Both of them worked on a number of the albums we'll be looking at shortly, including a number of production credits for Pharrell and Chad Hugo, better known of course as the Neptunes. That being said, it is hard to argue that 2006 wasn't the year of Timberlake. He's had plenty of brilliant years for the music he's helped produce, but 2006 gave us both Loose and Future Love Sex Sounds, two surprisingly different yet equally impacting records. His talent is on full display on both those records. It's just so sublime, and the way that they have aged is absolutely brilliant. You know, as far as pop music Mark's theory goes, it has that written all over. And speaking of those albums, let's dive into the pop albums that made 2006. So we're going to begin with the albums that Pop Music Mark noted in his video, and we're going to start off with Gwen Stefani's The Sweet Escape. This album is so bold, so confident in itself, so unapologetic about what it does. It wants to be weird and kooky, and it's proud of that because of how well designed it is. Without any hesitation, it throws you in at the deep end with its strangeness, and I like how uncompromising it is in that regard. You know, it's a pop record that's really built outside of any kind of constriction. You know, it's very, very free and happy to go where it wants to go. There's a lot of chanting in this record, lots of dance beats, and a bit of rapping as well. I think it knows that it's not particularly strong in this element, and it's certainly not trying to be, you know, like a hip-hop album all round, but it's the fact that, like, you know, Stefani clearly has so much confidence in just going out and doing that makes it so much fun. She's sort of just saying, hey, you know, I'm gonna karaoke, like, you know, a Tupac song, and I'm just gonna see what happens. And what I think I like about it is that it doesn't beg you to try and hypothesize some deeper meaning behind it. Stefani is having so much fun here. She's loving every minute, right? And then look at the fucking cover as well. I mean, God, it's clear that this is her project from top to bottom, and that she's doing all this for herself. Fuck you, basically. But I don't know if it's the most rewarding record ever. It does get a little bit peaky trophy after a while. The singles are great. The other stuff, I think, doesn't always quite land as well. But not in the sense that it isn't trying or that it hasn't been considered. You know, everything on here feels like it was a genuine exploration into something that she wanted to do, rather than it all just being filler. And I think that's really what the appeal of it really comes down to. Whenever I've heard people talking about it or seen people that like it, you know, it's the fact that it doesn't want to be considered an out-and-out dance pop record or electro pop record. You know, it's not looking to be like a classic of those genres. It's really happy just to exist and be whatever the hell you could try and describe it as. This certainly meets Pop Music Mark's theory. There's lots of stuff on here that is very dancey and, you know, has kind of 2006 club energy written all over it. This sits at like a 6.5 out of 10 for me. It's strong in its strong points, it's good. In its other points, it's a bit on the forgettable side, but not in like a, you know, throwaway kind of way, in just that it's a little bit unweighted, I think. Okay, if you have any prejudice or predispositions about Fergie's artistic quality outside of the Black Eyed Peas or how she would do on a solo career, I want you to park those at the door and fuck off with them, because you're not ready. you know, this album, it wins against you if you do that. It's already won, actually. The Dutchess is so surprisingly consistent and brilliant in ways that you just can't even begin to imagine when you first listen to it. I love this comment on the Rate Your Music page for the record that says that it's too avant-garde for Rate Your Music users. I would agree, personally. It loves to spend time spelling quite a lot, which maybe is a bit of a cover for a bit of lack of songwriting quality, I guess. But what's so brilliant is that there's just nothing that it doesn't try that isn't fully executed. It just wants to do everything, and it's going to do everything. Let's talk about some of the songs. We will get onto Fergalicious later, trust me. But we have got to talk about Glamorous. It's astonishing. It's one of the best pop songs of the decade. Probably one of the best ever, in my mind. What was achieved with this song is it still fully translates today. Those MIDI strings just give it this like plastic affluence, broke with expensive taste feel that so few other songs that have even tried to do something like it have ever got near to. The tone of it as well, you know, those beats are so understated and concise, and you know, the vocals are so husky, and it's got a certain kind of melodrama energy to it that isn't too overpowering, but just makes it feel so elegant. Like, the hooks are to die for. Oh, every single hook is to die for, good God. You know, it just sounds like getting off the plane at JFK wearing a designer trench coat and Dior sunglasses. It taps something deep in here. I love it. Also, having a song on the album called London Bridge, which is in itself a real moment, I think it's fair to say. And then to follow it up with the next track called Pedestal, which uses the actual riff from the original London Bridges Falling Down on it. And just to have those tracks next to each other, like, slay. And then Velvet? Velvet is a trip-hop song. Velvet sounds like it belongs on a Bjork record from the 90s. It's incredible. And she's just so effervescent with it. This isn't Fergie having a go at trip-hop, it's Fergie owning trip-hop. She just tries everything without trying too hard. And although that does give it the sort of the feel of a lot of the commercial albums or very commercialized pop music of the 2000s, where, you know, a solo artist kind of releases a 50-minute record that has every single genre on it just to make sure that everyone is happy. It does feel a bit more curated on this one, and it feels like she put her effort into everything and that she wanted to do everything on the record. And I know that that's the case because there's no moment on there that is a sort of, you know, what the actual fuck is this moment? Apart from maybe Mary Jane Shoes, because that is bonkers. This absolutely completely 100% fits into Pop Music Mark's theory. It screams mid-2000s from every single angle that it can. It is a collage of mass-produced music, and at the heart of it is Fergie's. At the heart of it is Fergie's own heart and passion and soul. And it just draws everything together really, really well. It's a 7 out of 10 record for me. But of all the albums that Pop Music Mark noted, there is one album that stands out well and above the rest. First of all, Nelly Furtado. Nelly Furtado. I just want that energy. I just want that energy, you know what I mean? This is a record that I revisited throughout my life. I had a real moment with it back again last year, just getting back into it. Its 4 lead singles are iconic, not in like the sort of camp slay way, as in like iconic that they were the year. They really were the sound of 2006. Nelly was on a high like no other during this time, and her talent is just at its absolute peak here, really. This is music that not only fits into Pop Music Mark's theory in general, but, you know, has become some of the most iconic dance music of the 2000s. And it has this amazing sense of distance to it. It's sort of set in a fictional tropical world. Everything is ever so slightly tinted with a bit of, you know, palm trees and sort of Latin influence. Nelly Furtado may well be Canadian, but you hear her Portuguese roots in it as well. It just gives it a real transformative and transportive kind of feel. And, you know, when it then gets to All Good Things, which is a song about the end of her marriage, it's like, it really touches quite deep. It's a very moving record in places. I don't think it's perhaps as consistent as it should be, but it's swinging so strong in so many places that it just, those other weaker bits don't really matter. It's such a menagerie of talent and of originality and brilliance. And just look at that cover. That is the sound of the record right there. It's wanting to be sexy and cool, but also quite illustrious and romantic and dark in places. I think it really captures a quite realistic feeling of wanting to have power in your body and, to be able to use it however you want and to be, proud of how you look and happy with yourself, but also dealing with the realities of romance. And it does that in a very astute way that doesn't feel too overpowering or contrived by any means. And the fact of the matter is, this record just makes me want to dance like a I can't put it any other way. It's an 8 out of 10 any day. The singles in particular just are what makes this record what it is. So those are the albums that Mark noted in his video, and what we're now going to do is have a look at some of the other big pop releases of the year. JT has aged badly, I think it's fair to say. My mum once said out of the blue, he's the one that went off the rails, isn't it? And it took me a long time to work out how she'd even come to that conclusion in the first place, but then what she was actually meaning. And in the years since, I've actually it does make more sense as time goes on. I think there's been a lot of assessment of stuff that he did in the past in recent times, particularly the Super Bowl 2004. I think that moment's been looked at in a very different lens now than it was back then. The stuff with Britney, absolutely not. Fucking disgusting. Fuck you, JT. And I think given that he ended up going from FutureSex LoveSounds to writing music for the Trolls movie, it's just a bit of a fall, really, isn't it? And not even a fall from grace, just a fall, Outside of all of that, however, FutureSex LoveSounds is a great record. It's such a good record. So much of it has this seminal feel. It feels important, it feels innovative and influential, and I think it knows that it's doing that. It has such a sense of futurism and alluring romanticness. It's really sort of guided through by JT whispering sweet nothings in people's ears. That gets a bit awkward at points, some of it doesn't sound too good, but when it's backed by some of the really strong songs on the album, none of that really matters because the music is just so fucking good. It also really fits into the obsession with harsh synths that a lot of albums and a lot of music would have in the years after. And I think this was ahead of the curve in that regard by a long stretch. We'll be talking about that track a little bit later on, you know what I mean? But let me talk to you, and My Love, that medley is every time it comes on, I just want to sit down and take it all in, And what goes around comes around. I mean, that just speaks for itself. It is one of his best songs. It's so damn good. This is an 8 out of 10 record for me. It's his strongest moment by far, external to all the stuff that he's put other people through and how he's acted, and who he is. This is just him as the artist that I think everyone knew he could become. He's a superstar here, and an innovative superstar at that. Okay, listen, Beyonce's debut, great record, important record, big change, etc, etc. But B-Day, babes, B-Day. B-Day is where Beyonce became Beyonce. We are talking Deja Vu. We're talking Get Me Bodied. We are talking Upgrade You. Upgrade You. We're talking Greenlight. We're talking Irreplaceable. This album is full to the brim. It's absolutely teeming with classics. Okay, maybe not quite classics, but just songs that are the sound of Beyonce, right? I love how on Upgrade You have those trumpets that just start so quickly. They arrive straight in. It's like slamming on a pedal with them. It's so good. All the sound is so full front. It's really it's not quite wall of sound, but it covers every single range absolutely to the max. Beyonce's vocals and the brass are all up here, and then you mix that with these really punchy drums and bass that sits down below. It just has this intensity and brashness that oozes confidence and swagger, and oftentimes Beyonce's really singing with a lot of fire, a lot of power. It's non-stop, basically. I love that it's able to do all that, and then it comes towards the end with Irreplaceable and just brings the whole pace down and delivers one of the best breakup songs of all time. It's just, it's a second album that just comes out swinging and says, we're not here to try and, reinvent the wheel or try and turn her into the world's greatest superstar. This is her coming out just punching, wanting to just let something fucking loose, not leaving any room for doubt that she is not going to be a superstar, because of course in 2006, she was still on the rise. She's, you know, she may well have been a solo artist, but she was not where she is today. But this is the moment that she then starts to properly fucking climb. And it just shows, you know, this is where it's at. I fucking love B-Day. It's one of my favourite records of her. 7.5 out of 10 on most days. I don't wanna do this anymore. Any year that Rihanna has released a record in is frankly a year that's been blessed. 2006 was no different. We got her second studio album, A Girl Like Me, and it's nice to return to this earlier side of her career, where it's not that she sounds more innocent by any means. You know, she sounds a little bit less developed, a little bit less perhaps artistically in control, which has its weak sides with the album. But I think it's quite nice to see her with a slight sort of innocence to it. Not that the songs here aren't often quite sexual, quite romantic and fun, and we like that. You know, it's very much part of who she is. She's kind of building, I think, the image that we know of her with this record. It's a weaker album overall compared to the other ones that we're talking about on here, but the singles, they smack hard and they smack good. That sounds really weird to say, but I hope it translates. There's a few occasional hints to Caribbean sounds on this, which is quite nice, and obviously refers to her Barbudan heritage. I forgot how you say someone from Barbados there. But it does feel a bit on the sterilised side, and I wonder how much of an influence she had, or didn't have rather, over that, you know, corporate greed. I feel like she had to fight a little bit to get that included in the first place, you know what I mean. This isn't her best album by any means, but it's an important record, and I think it's her starting to establish herself as what she would become, which of course is one of the biggest artists of all time, like literally. It's a 6 out of 10 for me. Do it all the time. I think pop will always have a room for a female solo artist just talking about life with a sort of pop soul singer-songwriter kind of feel to it, and just talking about, you know, romance and hanging out with your friends and, you know, cool light-hearted things like that. And, you know, with Ray's just beautiful voice, it's just no exception with this record either. Ray is a thoroughly likable artist on her self-titled album. Like, it's so peppered with these lovely little hooks that just twiddle around a little bit. They're beautiful. It's neat and totally carefree and gentle and soft, and it's as warm as the album cover looks. The UK went a bit mad for the singles that came from this, and rightly so, but I do think it lacks staying power elsewhere. I think that comes with the nature of the music. It is just soft. It isn't trying to be too, you know, not memorable, but you know, it's not looking to reinvent anything. So, but I think what I like about it is that pop will always have room for something like this, because it does feel quite genuine up against the more manufactured pop that sells in equal numbers to records like this. It might not be super engaging and radical, but like, I don't think it needs to be. In that regard, it's kind of similar to adult contemporary, but the good thing is it's nowhere near, not even remotely as insufferable or appalling as most adult contemporary music is. I think it's a very likeable example of that. You could play this at a dinner party, I think, quite happily, or put it on in the background, and it's more than happy to do that, and you won't want to scrape your eyeballs out with it. I'm just thinking of Gary Barlow's solo work. I'm so sorry. This is very much worth listening to. It's far from radical, but like, I really can't imagine anyone genuinely seeking to dislike it. And with a name like Corinne Bailey Rae, you have got to do a self-titled album. Like, come on. 6 out of 10. I really like a lot of the records that we've talked about so far, but there is something about Back to Black that just, it just elevates it further than the ones we've been talking about so far. I think it's because when you buy into it, you do buy into the entire kind of world and attraction of Amy Winehouse. This is her most famous album, it's her most successful record, and I think to many extents as well, it is her most personal album as well. She was blessed with a gift to be able to pour her heart out in a way that everyone could relate to. And, you know, she was a real storyteller who gave us this depiction of a flawed but inspiring young woman who, you know, struggled but was proud of herself and was happy to be honest about herself as well. And I think that is what stands out about the record most of all, the honesty, because away from all of the media shit that she went through and all of the the hype that deservedly exists around this record, at its core, it is a very unshowy, very honest record. I don't think we truly knew at the time what she was dealing with and what she was going through, but, you know, this record was an expression of that, and a really inspired one at that too. This does not fit into Pop Music Mark's theory by any means, because it's very much sort of 60s soul and easy listening, and a bit of jazz as well. You know, it's very different in that regard. But as far as 2006 culture goes, this is a keystone. This is so important, and it reached so many different people's lives, different parts of the world, and it does hold a deservedly and brilliantly high place within British music history, and it should never ever be taken down from there. As appallingly sad as Winehouse's very untimely passing is, it protects this album. It is completely untouchable whatsoever, and anyone who tries to come up with, you know, some snarky take on it, I think is just shot down by the music itself, because it is, you know, it's her story, and it should be protected as much as she deserved to be protected. It is also so important to recognise the impact that Winehouse had on women in music, and to paraphrase Lady Gaga, her success made it easier for unconventional women to have mainstream pop success. Not only has Gaga cited her as an influence, but so has Adele, Lana Del Rey, Florence Welch, Georgia Smith, Billie Eilish, and so many more, and I think that speaks volumes to the impact of this album. Amy Winehouse as a whole artist is obviously the greater influence on those, but it was this album that brought her to the world in the way that we know now. And I find it difficult to speak about it without feeling very moved and sort of, you know, joyous but very sad as well. And I think in a weird way that is the story. It's the story of her life, you know, that at least the life that we know of her when she was in the public eye. It was full of so much highs and so many lows, and this album sits so perfectly in the middle and captures both of those. It's just, yeah, I could talk about all the songs on it for a very long time. I've listened to it for my whole life. I really, truly love it. It's an 8.5 out of 10 for me. It's been an 8.5 out of 10 for me since I first listened to it, and I would put it there again, you know, whenever you ask me. So there are a few other albums to mention, but I don't really have enough to say about them, so here they are. They're worth mentioning, but just not in too much detail. There you go. What I now want to do, though, is go and talk about some of the singles released this year, and just to make it a little bit more exciting, we're going to go in reverse order from good to very good to personal favourites. Oh, I wish I was a punk rock. I lied, actually. We're not starting off with the songs that I like. We're starting off with something that I don't really like, actually, and wasn't even really released in 2006, but did become popular in 2006, so it kind of counts. I fear for when this song is copped by someone on TikTok and becomes a trend about, you know, being born in the wrong generation and how, you know, it's all just going tits up, you know, and if only we just lived, I wish I was in a different year, you know. In fact, actually, it's wrong to even think of it as that, because it's not about pretending that you lived in a different year. It's about pretending that somehow everything was very rosy back in the 60s and that things, you know, weren't horrendously appalling for black and queer people, amongst others. That trend will happen at some point, and it will be along the lines of, oh my god, this generation just don't get it, you know? I low-key hate parts of this song. And for you know, why does she say when footballers' hairs were long? Why is that a problem? But I especially don't like the bit where it says, back when music mattered. Oh, babes, you just, you know, get a grip. Get a grip. This has done more for music, for society, for people that listen to it than any of this. Okay, any of this will ever be regarded as having achieved. God. But at the same time, it would be very remiss not to include this, because everyone at my primary school was singing that chorus when it came out. And on a more neutral level, it does look at the naivety of the whole born in the wrong generation argument. There's a little bit that, you know, it's that kind of teen naivety of wishing you were born in a different time and blissfully ignoring how lucky you are to live in a modern era like this, or, you know, in the years after that when things are different and in most cases are better. It also really carries that born in the wrong generation mentality by being so rakishly simple and kind of coming, you know, it's written like a protest song. And it's important to acknowledge it as well, because these sorts of tracks, these sort of very, you know, simple, very snarky kind of singer-songwriter tracks became really big for a little while after. And it does say a lot that this was the leading single from her album at the time, which was called Smile. It confuses people. Is that not the most irritating album name you've ever heard? What I'm trying to say though is that this song helped us foster in the whole kind of fuck the haters kind of song that we had, you know, that so many artists released in the early 2010s and which were all just equally as awful as the rest. This is just a track with such an insipid and specific appeal, and yet we must acknowledge it for fear of history repeating itself. Okay, now we're on to the better stuff. We're out of the dark. Oh, babes, Arabic influence in pop just sends me to the moon. It just scratches. So good, honestly. And this is fucking electric. This is so, like, it's so dumb, but so much fun at the same time. I'm a sexy mama, I get what I wanna. Like, does that not just have Disney Channel written all over it? The instrumentation and songwriting on that chorus is where this song just leaves the fucking plane of existence that we exist on, right? Like, that key change in the chorus, oh my gosh, and the tension of it, it's so cool. There's a lot of nostalgic appeal that I think makes this what it is today in terms of why you would listen to it, and it is like a weak song on most fronts, I think it's fair to say, but the vibe just works so much. The Pussycat Dolls, I think, were always a little bit lacking, I think, in artistic integrity. But when they deliver stuff that's as fiery and as fierce as this, it's hard to disagree that they aren't pretty fucking good. God damn, what an iconic song, mate. This is one of the most iconic choruses of the 2000s. Certainly one of the most memorable of 2006. Good lord. I think the song just speaks for itself, really. Like, how many times have you sung that chorus? And the fact that they drop the instruments away for it so that, you know, her vocals just hit even harder. Oh my lord, this song is like a cup of tea. It's warm, it's hanging out with your mates, it's pouring out your feelings after a bit of a rubbish day with your best mates and putting your records on, obviously. You know, it's so comforting and sweet, and I think it's got one of those sort of, it's got a vibe thing that does celebrate music in some way as well. It's the fact also that they're talking about records, you know, and that vinyl back then was nowhere near as popular as it is today, nor was as popular as it had been in the past because it was still on decline. And I think that does give it a certain rusticness as well, that it just, you know, adds to its genuineness. What is not to like about it? This is a good song. You know, there are just songs that I think have to be treated completely independent. You know, I think this is one of those examples of an event song. It was a moment in time, and I think you can probably track a bit of a, you know, how would you put it? You could definitely plot a graph of some sort that would go from Fergalicious probably up to somewhere like Anaconda by Nicki Minaj and a few others. Lots of artists have tried to have this song. A lot of artists have tried. Not many have succeeded. This song always puts me in mind of Lose Control by Missy Elliott, Ciara, and Fat Man Scoop, which came out the year before. And they both have a very similar energy, very intense sort of hip-hop, R&B, dance stuff. Both sorts of length as well, actually, with an insane beat that's just absolutely so over the top and brilliant. I don't think Fergalicious works as well as Lose Control, because Lose Control is, you know, it's like taking acid through your fucking eyes, I mean. But it is good, right? Let's not pretend for a second. It's, you know, so much of it should be silly and stupid, but it isn't, because Fergie is so committed. She is so committed. It is literally her song. It's like a superhero anthem, right? will.i.am gives us nothing, which is great. Just chatting absolute shit on that intro. And like sample that they use, it's just so intense. You can't even work out what it is. It doesn't even give you time to work that out. And yet so many of the lines are so iconic and catchy, and more spelling as well. We love that. This is a song that you can't avoid, right? You can't not acknowledge it. That's all I have to say. This song honestly sounds like an iPod Nano in my mind. I kind of missed Me and You when I was younger because I think it was a lot bigger in America than it was in the UK, but it crops up so much when we're talking about the 2000s and in particular 2000s pop music and culture. That minimalist beat is so of its time and so blingy, and yet I think if it was released today, it would still just go off as well. Cassie sings so carefree on this and with these amazingly generic lyrics, but it works at the same time. Those little string hits as well. Oh my god, yes. This is a good song. Very much in fitting with Pop Music Mark's theory, and it really bridges the gap. It's one of those tracks that really bridges the gap between the golden era of R&B and pop R&B era, you know, delivered with a go on girl, give us nothing kind of energy. Definitely, maybe actually the most recognisable song of the year. I think that argument could be made, and certainly of the 2000s. This went into the stratosphere. It was everywhere for the entire year, right? Such a brilliant piece of neo-soul, so instantly memorable. Every verse is worth singing along to. That chorus rises high, those strings that come in, the moodiness of it and the apprehension, like damn. I don't know if this was as influential as it deserved to be, because I think a lot of the neo-soul that came after it doesn't sound quite the same as this. But this was just one of those songs that I think it's hard to find people that haven't heard it, right? It also put Gnarls, Barkley and CeeLo Green on the map, who continued to have a great career after this. I think I also want to mention Smiley Faces as well. I toy between whether I like Smiley Faces or Crazy more than, you know, each other or whatever. I think Smiley Faces at the moment is my preferred song of those. I just love those falling synths on the chorus. They're so memorable, honestly. You know, that whole song for me just sounds like inner city London on a sunny day. And it's wonderful. It's urban, it's slick. And that bridge? And that bridge as well? Oh my god. Oh my god, so fucking good. Like, don't know how much that fits into Pop Music Mark's kind of theory. Probably not too much in that regard, but there is a lot of the production elements that I was mentioning earlier about texture, about, you know, sort of being a collage of sounds going on there. This is neo-soul, but it's very coordinated, very computerized as well, without sounding too digital, you know. Maybe more digital than computerized, actually, if that makes sense. If it doesn't, then fucking God help you. Look, you saw how much I wanted to talk about every single from B-Day, but Deja Vu just squeezes ahead enough to put it on this list. This makes me want to dance my tits off. It's bombastic. The chemistry between Bey and Jay-Z on this is absolutely incredible. Those brass sections just hit as hard as the beat is snappy. Like, the bass is so sexy, like so damn sexy, god. And the way the whole track just builds to that final third, Beyonce's voice raises and raises, you know, it's the sound of being totally at the mercy of your emotions and being obsessed with someone, and it's done so wonderfully. It is the sound of desire taking over, and she achieves it fully on this. And Jay's verses are fantastic too, which is saying something for a Jay-Z and Beyonce collaboration. The single cut is superb, opens the album brilliantly, sets the tone right away with that bass and, you know, the kind of instrumentation that's to come on B-Day. But it is the homecoming performance from Coachella 2018 that changes this song into just something completely different. If it had been recorded in the way that it was performed at Coachella on Homecoming, this song would be in a whole other category of itself. But it is still a great single, regardless. I really want to talk about so much of the songs on B-Day. I do, but I have to just gotta keep it streamlined, you know. Deja Vu is a fucking brilliant tune. I will one day fully explain why Girls Aloud are the greatest girl group in British pop music history, and I think, you know, potentially in world pop music history as well for my rankings, or at least up there with the very best. This song is a part of that reason. And as far as Pop Music Mark's theory is concerned, it is a song that counters kind of what he was talking about, because this is firm proof for me of EDM starting to influence pop music. This is a club song. This is an electro dance song that has been, you know, thoroughly popified, and it was so far ahead of its time. so far ahead of its time. Loud, rocky, wall of sound production, big, massive dance beats, huge vocal hooks, everything is massive and blown out. Like, play this back to back with Judas by Lady Gaga and try and count the differences, because there aren't many. Girls Aloud, as ever on their best material, are just fucking electric here. Their personality is all over this. The song is just so chock full of hooks. It never lets up on its energy once. You know, it is a perfect marriage between mid-2000s EDM and pop, and it was super influential in what was to come. It really was a key stepping stone in pop embracing EDM. I think it's very much worth talking about SOS right after something kind of ooh, because, you know, its success was an equally important stepping stone towards dance and electropop becoming the genre of the 2010s. I mean, let's just talk about that soft cell sample. Like, one of the best pieces of sampling in recent pop history, potentially ever. I know I say that all the time, but this is why 2006 was so good, right? You know, it pays so much respect to their cover of Tainted Love, whilst also innovating it for a modern audience and, you know, updating it. Every part of this track is just so inspired. You know, Rihanna is alluring and passionate. That beat is dark and cool, a bit mysterious, but very, you know, slick as well. It kind of glimmers in the same way that light sort of shimmers through on a dark club floor, right? The whole thing is just so sex charged, but in a very wide appeal way that everyone can get along with. This really is a song that I think we should be considering a classic in the years to come, and it's certainly one of her best, that's for sure. And an incredible video as well. Like, this was a real blueprint for what Rihanna was about to do, and I think it's fair to say was already doing, because I remember being obsessed with this song when it came out. I didn't find out that this song was produced by the Neptunes until quite some time after I first heard it, and yet finding that out was a, like, you know, oh, that makes so much sense kind of revelation. Everything about Tokyo Drift is so sharp, fiery, and swaggering. It is the sound of 2006 action movie energy. And I think that it is fair to say that Tokyo Drift as a film would not have been as good as it was without this song. And just to be clear, you know, Tokyo Drift, it isn't a very good film overall. But, like, the concept that it puts out there of a world where people are just kind of, you know, slinking through Tokyo in tuned JDM cars, and they've got TVs on their dashboards, and they go and, you know, meet up and at car parks every Saturday night to, you know, go to DJ sets and party around their cars, and they go to cool club rooms that have, like, you know, garages around the back of them, and no one really has a job and money doesn't seem to be a problem. Like, you know, is that not the most brilliant and most happy world that you could ever imagine going to? Like, I answered a question once about, you know, what would be the fictional universe you'd go to if you could? And it's like, Tokyo Drift. You have everything that you have right now, but with no worry about money. Everyone's driving cool cars. Everyone parties in the fucking car park. Like, what is not to like about it? Why would you not want to live in that world? And I think this song is that world personified. Every verse on it just feels like it's been given as much attention as the rest, and yet it still makes time to showcase that astonishing beat, that unbelievably ferocious beat, and that chorus that is just so, like, I mean, who doesn't know that chorus? Come on, it's so good. It just goes off every time I hear it. That song goes off. It's fucking fantastic. We are getting into the upper echelons now, baby. Oh yeah. 16 years on, we can safely say that this is one of the most innovative, seminal, brilliant moments in pop music history. And most infectious as well, actually, because this gets under your skin and it never leaves. It sounds like it came from 3,000 years in the future. It is like a sci-fi, gothic R&B sex fantasy shoved through Timberland's production. It's unbelievable. Those ad-libs are worth 1 star alone, as are the "take it to the bridge," and, like, the bits on the chorus, like the sort of choruses that are on the chorus where JT's going, "Ah!" It's so silly and so, like, cheeky and kind of almost stupid in a way, but because like the artistic direction of it is so slick and controlled and futuristic, it just all makes sense. It's perfect. And it's so down dirty as well. Like it's a filthy song. The layering that goes on here as well is so brilliant because every sound element feels like a block in Ableton or FL Studio that you're kind of like layering on top of each other, and it's kind of like, you know, a sort of musical rendition of how that looks. Everything starts and finishes exactly as precisely as you want it to. It sounds so digitized and futuristic. And as far as influence goes, this song is part of that lineage of pop challenging conventions of the time and being willing to be more sexually explicit. It joins a long history of songs that have done that, from, you know, Like a Virgin, like by Madonna, all the way up to more recent entries like WAP by Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B. And, you know, this song was a really important part of helping to advance, pave a way forward for songs like that to come. Oh, for God's sake, man, no. I'm trying to find a different word here. For songs like that to exist in the years since, it would be very wrong to suggest they did that on its own, obviously, because it is definitely part of that chain. But I think that this song in particular has an importance because it's so serious. It's so committed to putting sex front and center. And I think that seriousness helps give it a certain amount of validation that, you know, pop music has been able to use in the years since. This pop music mark it confuses me why you didn't include it in your video, to be honest, why you didn't put, you know, FutureSex LoveSounds on there, because this song is exactly what you're talking about. Now listen, SexyBack is a great song. It makes me feel things. It's at home in a club, and it is one of Timbaland's finest moments. But Maneater is all of that and more. Oh my lord. If SexyBack is set 3,000 years in the future, Maneater is set in the basement, a sweaty basement club in some foreign tropical city. This song is humid, it's close, it's passionate, it is ready to just, you know, rip itself open. It burns. Oh, it burns. That chorus is world-beating, exceptional in every single way, but then on the second one, in come those little synths just to elevate it even further, and the way that they climb just turns the whole song, you know, it makes it feel like an event whenever you listen to it. Everything about it feels like it's climaxing, it's coming together, it's acknowledging something so powerful and brilliant, and oh my lord, it makes me feel just so sexy and energized. And I had the great pleasure of listening to this at a Dirty Pop night a while back. R.I.P. I miss it already, good God. But hearing this at 2 a.m. in the middle of a sweaty dance floor when everyone else is as hyped as you are for it, and you're just, you know, in the hustle and bustle of that crowd and you're dancing with them, it's like nothing you could ever experience anywhere else. It's indescribable. It's astonishing. It feels just as, you know, electrified and tantalizing as that song is. You know, this song was such a transformative moment for pop music at the time, and, you know, it was mad how controversial it was. It was, you know, Furtado was described as being too promiscuous. Ironically, she obviously then released a single called Promiscuous from the same album, and playing them back to back is in just, you know, a pleasure, one of God's greatest gifts to this planet, frankly. It's one of those moments where, you know, every element is just so brilliant, and just one of those songs that I think is just a little bit untouchable, really. Nothing will quite compare to what this song does. You know, I can just see the sort of dark grey concrete walls that are lined with sweat and scantily clad people just, you know, in the groove. Whenever I hear this, it makes me want to go and do that and live that. You know, this is the sound of that. This is that kind of world sound of 2006 that I was talking about. It feels like everyone is coming together. But there is one song that does just go a little bit further, just a little bit more, and I have to rank it higher. Ladies up in here tonight. This is one of the most pivotal moments in modern pop culture history. Those trumpets, oh my god. I was only 8 when I first heard this, but I can take you right back to when I first watched the music video as well. It was a watershed moment. It was it was an instant classic moment. Anyone who thinks this is bad is kidding themselves. Anyone who thinks this is bad is kidding themselves. This song is the sound of like it feels like the whole world coming together to share one moment of dance brilliance, right? Imagine this being played at the same club that Maneater takes me to, but it's got a more rambunctious, a bit of a, more freeing kind of feel to it. This thing fuels itself on a fire like no other. It makes me want to pour tequila on myself and twerk. Like, it is just the sound of mid-decade world music unity. Everyone, I think, is kind of brought under one umbrella with this song, and I love Wyclef Jean's sort of Haitian and Latin music influence on it, and his vocals and verses are really good. They add a lot of chemistry to it, which is just what it needs to kind of turn it into a bit more of a tense sort of, a proper dance, as in like a competitive, almost, romantic dance. The dialogue that plays out between them is exactly how the song feels when you listen to it. And, it's not only just about how good that hook is, but the beat is so unstoppable. And Shakira's vocals, and they're just so brilliant. She's at her best in this song by far. I feel like it's one of those songs that you could just play anywhere, and I think everyone would get along with it. But I also think, it does just have a properly transportive quality to it. It's, that video as well. I don't know where they set it. I assume it was probably set in Colombia or in Haiti, potentially. Where did they set the video, actually? We're going to check. Okay, the video was filmed in Los Angeles, which is kind of disappointing in some ways. But, it has, but, it's got such a tropical feel to it. And it's kind of different to Latin music or Caribbean music or other music from tropical parts of the world, in that it is a more globalized feel to it. I think it's got such a sense of unity and of everyone being represented and everyone here for the same purpose to, express themselves and to feel moved and dance with each other. It defined an era. It defined an era for me. It defined an era of the mid-2000s. It is one of my favorite songs of all time. And I think it is a credit to exactly just how big a year for pop music 2006 was. This is pop music Mark's theory, firmly. I don't think it was perhaps quite as influential from a music perspective on the pop music that would come, but it has the kind of beats that he was talking about. In terms of what I've put in, it has, the texture, the fire, the flavour to it. It's a proper collage of stuff. And once again, that trumpet hook is just so good. And I think with that, we have come to the end of our deep dive into 2006 pop music. This was a year that delivered the goods. It had so many brilliant albums and singles that were very important in informing the music that would come later, and really helped to establish 2006 as its own moment within popular music. The gaps that this bridged and the way that the music really captured the feel of the mid-2000s, as well as sort of representing where pop music was pivoting itself towards where it would go in the future, is something that is just so exciting and interesting to ruminate on. I look back on this year very fondly in terms of its music, I think because it reflects a much more unified world, or at least an image of a much more unified world compared to the more distorted and broken world that we live in today. I think also it is significant that this was the year that poptimism became a much bigger force than it had done previously and really established itself as what we know it is today. And in terms of the realms of poptimism, I think we should be celebrating just how bold a year 2006 was for pop music. Even if pop music Mark's theory can't be applied to all the music that comes from it, I think it is better to recognise the pop music of 2006 almost as its own unified moment in time. Some of the songs that were released this year can be linked together and do just sound brilliant when put together, not just because they reflect on the time that they came from or because they're released at the same time, but because musically they're really celebrating and utilising similar elements. And yet within that we had such a diversity in terms of what was achieved. We had everything from, space-aged R&B to world music fire, and that's an incredible range of stuff to have in one year. I have no doubt that I will continue to listen to the music of this year for a long time to come, and I'd love to know any stories that you have of 2006 or any memories or anything that kind of is brought up by the music from it. Were there any songs that I should be ringing the praises of? Let me know in the comments if I missed things, if you want to talk about things, because I'd love to discuss this further. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I hope that you're keeping well, and I'll catch you in the next one.